Hi, everyone. This is Ted Sherrill with Oracle. I appreciate y'all joining us today for the webcast on ROI for database lifecycle management and best practices. Today, I have with me Tim Mooney, who's director of our product marketing group over enterprise and cloud manageability. And we're going to be discussing, of course, the value that enterprise manager, especially database lifecycle management, brings to organizations, and that quantifiable value, if you will. So thank y'all for joining us today. A couple of housekeeping items. If you have a question, please submit it on the Q&A via the Zoom. If you are dialed in on audio only, you'll have to hit *6 to unmute yourself, and we'll work to accommodate those at the end of the presentation. So if you have any questions there, but again, appreciate y'all joining. So next slide, Tim. So again, just a quick safe harbor statement. Again, we're not talking about any future software releases and dates, etc. So this, just as a safe harbor disclosure. So what we're going to cover today is, the common IT challenges, the challenges that DBAs face, and of course, how Enterprise Manager and especially Database Lifecycle Management helps you address those. And then we're going to cover how customers have the benefits that they've achieved, some specific customer examples from being able to use Enterprise Manager in order to address some of these challenges. So one of the benefits I have at Oracle is I cover all North America accounts, and I normally meet with a little over between 100 and 150 different customers a year in person. So spend a lot of time traveling around and meeting with customers, and we hear a lot of the challenges at the business level are pretty common. One, budgets aren't expanding, or there's a lot of competition for the budgets that are out there. Secondly, most of the times headcount's not expanding. Shocker, most companies or organizations are looking to do more with less. And so that puts increased pressure, especially on DBAs. Growing security concerns, and we'll talk a little bit about this, but everyone's aware of the breaches and the ransomware attacks, etc. And security is becoming, or has become for most organizations, probably their major threat to availability of their critical applications. And so therefore that's a critical concern. And of course, in conjunction with security comes regulatory compliance pressures. And so that's something else you have to take into effect. So the DBAs managing these Oracle environments have a lot of pressures, being, limited budgets, being asked to do more with less. And then at the same time, in addition to managing the database to ensure availability requirements, also working to ensure that you're meeting security and regulatory requirements as well. Also, moving to the cloud is an issue for a lot of customers. Almost all of our customers have some databases up into the cloud, whether it's in IaaS environments or even database as a service environments, etc. So having to accommodate that new changing landscape is also a challenge. And then the proliferation of applications, that's really nothing new. That, of course, is just an evolution of a business over time. But again, creates even more pressures for administrators. Next slide, Tim. So again, some of the top challenges that are faced by our DBAs, Oracle's done a study through the Independent Oracle User Group, and Tim is very familiar with this study. So Tim, tell us about what are some of the common pressures and challenges that Oracle DBAs are facing based on this IOUG study.
Yeah, thank you, Ted. And yeah, so this study is something that we commissioned the user group, Oracle's user group, to do this survey. And we do this regularly. We've got a huge install base, obviously thousands of customers using the Oracle database. The vast majority of them are using Enterprise Manager in various components of it. So in this study, these are the top concerns that we see from the DBAs explicitly. So 78% mentioned downtime resulting from untested changes. And then half of them are talking about unpredictable SQL performance. And of course, the amount of data growth is massive, and that's another common challenge for DBAs. And then lastly, on the top hit list here is the requirement of DBAs to handle more and more databases individually. So again, lots of challenges here. And this is the type of information we get regularly from our constituency, and all this kind of information goes into developing the product, Oracle Enterprise Manager. It is our de facto monitoring, management, and control system for the database, as well as your engineered systems. And we're looking at all these challenges that you're facing. How do you diagnose and tune problems? How do you manage the complexity? How do you handle larger and larger database estates? How do you manage across on-prem and the cloud? And that's what Oracle Enterprise Manager does. We've been doing it for a number of years, and this is the de facto tool that most DBAs are using to manage their estates.
It's a good point, Tim. And, you know, probably those pains that we just outlined from the IOUG, those probably aren't new news for anybody on this webcast, anybody that's administered Oracle database for any length of time. You know, approximately 1/3 of the support requests that come in around the database from our significant customers, those pertain to patching, provisioning, configuration, etc., when they do not have the database lifecycle management pack. That percentage drops down from 1/3 to substantially lower to approximately 5% for customers that do have DBLM. So this greatly eases the effort. And really a big part of this webcast is we're not trying to convince you of the pain of patching and configuration maintenance and sustainability, etc. Y'all live that day to day. What today's webcast, what we want to focus on is we have customers that have worked to quantify the benefits to their organization, for using Enterprise Manager and Database Lifecycle Management. And, we wanted to share that with y'all today so that you can work with upper management to gain funding to alleviate these pressures. And that's really what one of the primary objectives we're working on today.
That's great. Thanks, Ted. And that's a great segue to our next slide here, which is another study that we commissioned with a third party, Pique Solutions, an analyst firm that surveyed and interviewed a number of Enterprise Manager customers looking to do exactly what you said, which is quantify the business benefits that they are achieving using Enterprise Manager. We go into quite a bit of detail here. This is a really nicely written report that hopefully those in our audience can take a look at in more detail. So, starting from the top, DBAs and IT staff are seeing a dramatic increase in IT productivity. And we'll show you the quantified cost reduction and cost avoidance that they've accomplished in this study. Another aspect of using Enterprise Manager and some of the automation and some of the agility that it brings is enabling businesses altogether to be more agile, delivering new services faster and rolling out new features faster. Again, not everybody is moving to the cloud in rapid pace. Probably everybody has started, and recognizing that you don't lose the requirement to manage your on-premise estate. Now you also have the responsibility of managing something different in the cloud. And Enterprise Manager has helped those that have been doing that to manage that seamlessly across both environments. Then also, as Ted mentioned, you can improve your security posture, and we'll go into more depth there. And just as a thematic note, you'll see in this report evidence of users of Enterprise Manager moving from a reactive posture to a more proactive posture around their IT processes, which is just helping them deliver higher SLAs, reduce their costs, and eliminate problems before they become a challenge for the company.
No, that's excellent, Tim. And one thing I want to make a point here for everybody that's attending is, leverage Oracle. I'll have my contact information at the end of the presentation, but you can leverage us. We have access to a lot of this information. We work with a lot of customers and third parties to quantify the benefits. Many times, I'd say the majority of times I go into customers, they know their pains very well. They even know the Oracle solutions like DBLM. We've had Enterprise Manager around for decades now. This is not a new tool. So most people are very familiar with it. What they do have difficulty in doing is sometimes getting management's buy-in to procuring database lifecycle management to achieve the benefits. And a lot of times they do not have the quantifiable measures or evidence, if you will, to present to management in these different areas that we're looking at here to help them gain budget. A CIO receives budget requests from many organizations around security, manageability, regulatory compliance, et cetera, throughout their enterprise. And basically, those are competitive in vying for budget. And one of the things that you can lean on Oracle for is to help you make your case to upper management to alleviate some of these pains and pressures that you're living with day in and day out.
All right, thanks, Ted. So let's dive right into it. So one of the highlights of the report is identifying a 60% ROI over 3 years, which for this composite company amounts to a savings of over $12 million over those 3 years. And it's broken down into productivity improvements, agility and scale, essentially growth enablement improvements, as well as resource optimization.
Now that's a high level statistic, and what this slide here is going to show is that for that 60% ROI that they achieved over 3 years, of course, people's antennas go up about, is that realistic? And, how was that achieved? How could Enterprise Manager, where will it achieve the return on investment? And how will it go about doing it? And where will the benefits be? And quantifying that again for your upper management. And that's what Tim's going to walk us through that the Pique Solutions study shows us.
Yeah, okay, so let me go on to the next slide here. So this is an important slide. It's a bit of a roadmap. Depending on where you're coming from, as Ted said, every company has their specific pain points. Predominantly, most Oracle database users and DBAs are using Enterprise Manager in the lower left-hand corner, which is our diagnostics and tuning pack. The vast majority of customers are using that for troubleshooting, for tuning, and diagnostics. From there, the general progression that we often see is to the top left, which is around standardizing, automating things like patching, provisioning, compliance checks, and those kinds of activities. Then as you look to the right-hand side, in the lower right is those companies that tend to be risk averse, are very concerned about the impact of any changes, patches, updates, and so on. They want to understand the impact or the implication that will have on their environment. Those customers are leveraging real application testing so they can validate what's going to happen with those changes. And then culminating in the top right corner, this is generally representative of companies who have a significant development team. They need databases for their tests, qualification, and development. So what we've built into Enterprise Manager here is the cloud management pack, which one of the key features there is the ability for development organizations to have a self-service capability to deploy and provision their databases under the guidance of the DBA who set up the automation and so on. So this, again, helps the DBA scale their effectiveness, as well as speed changes within the organization.
Yeah, that's a great overview, Tim. And, one of the things I want to highlight here is that, the average Oracle database of our large customers has not been patched in about 27 months. And what we're seeing is things like the Verizon report that came out that said 98% of the breaches that they investigate were due to known vulnerabilities, meaning that a patch existed for that vulnerability. So we all remember the recent credit bureau that was unfortunately hacked by China, it appears, and it was due to the hacking occurred because a patch had not been applied. And so a lot of these nation states, as well as hackers, are becoming more sophisticated. And when companies are taking an extended period of time to apply patches, that provides a window of opportunity for those organizations or individuals. So that's something to keep in mind around the patching. I've also worked with large customers that have just said, we're spending so much time on patching, we have so many pressures, we don't have time to test the patches, et cetera. And of course, that's a concern. So, Enterprise Manager helps to provide efficiencies around all of this process to make it much more viable. And you're going to see the customer examples that specifically relate to that. So, so I just wanted to make that point.
Okay, great. So I'm going to go through a couple of use cases here for each of those packs, starting with what predominantly most companies are already using, but just to give reference to the diagnostics and tuning packs, typical scenarios, a basic report to run might take 45 minutes. Using the diagnostics and tuning pack, you can gather the tuning set, then run SQL Performance Analyzer, and get those reports running in 10 to 15 minutes. This is based on one of the surveyed customers. Another comment from that customer is the benefit it brings to junior DBAs, for example. Typical scenario, it takes 3 weeks to figure out tuning and adding indexes. When they use the tuning advisor and enterprise manager, the DBA effort moves down to a few hours. So dramatic improvement in time, a dramatic improvement in resource usage. And a nice comment on the bottom. This is from senior DBA, essentially talking about the massive reduction in incidents reported, dropping by 5-fold, and unplanned downtime reduced by up to 40%. And this is largely by identifying and solving these problems so much faster before it even has an impact on the business. So that's sort of the base package from the lower left corner of the previous slide. And then, as Ted mentioned, a lot of our focus today is going to be on database lifecycle management, which some of the key benefits of DBLM is automatic patching, automatic provisioning, automatic testing for compliance and regulatory requirements. So I'm going to do that in case studies. This study is part of the Pique Solutions survey. It's a major US cable and media service provider. Their challenge is they have a large database estate. And, you know, as Ted mentioned, it's very difficult to keep up with patching in a state like that. Their strategy was to leverage Enterprise Manager to standardize on configurations, then build out a self-service publishing and subscription service for patching and provisioning. The results, essentially what they did is they enabled their development team, their application team to self-service, where they're actually managing their own patching schedule through a self-service console. The great news that the DBAs brought from this survey is that they were able to patch their entire estate every quarter, which of course, as Ted pointed out, really improves your security posture. Also, for the DBA's benefit, it reduced the amount of time they're spending on patching by 80%. That's a huge improvement. And a lot of this was due to enabling automation, which, in addition to all the overhead savings, it also reduces human error. I mean, obviously with automation, you're going to get that repeatability you're looking for.
Yeah, one of the things that we see a lot of increased focus, if you will, on configuration standardization. And part of that is coming from chief privacy officers and all of the new privacy regulations, like the European Union's General Data Protection Regulation, the California Consumer Protection Act, et cetera, where if a database contains PII or a certain level of PII, it needs, a lot of times the privacy office will set a standard, if you will, for how that database must be configured and therefore protected for that PII. And those regulations, as you're probably familiar with, for those of you that deal with them, say that, you know, you have to have a adequate level of controls around that data to protect it. And of course, configurations are a key component of that. So database lifecycle management pack, you know, when you're talking about whether it's 20 databases or 2,000 in this example, the ability to standardize on those configurations and sustain that configuration and be able to be alerted of configuration drift, et cetera, that could potentially put you out of compliance with a specific regulation, et cetera, that is really key. And again, this automates that process for you.
Oops, sorry about that, Ted. All right. Well, I guess we'll move on to this one. Sorry about that.
Go ahead, Tim.
So this is another case study, Fortune 100 insurance company, really fast growing company. It was a small automotive insurance company that's grown into a massive financial services institution. In this case, they had over 3,000 databases and were really faced with the challenge of keeping up to date with all the patching required. Their strategy was to deploy an automated patch solution. This might start to look a little familiar and similar to what Ted was saying, and you'll see a common theme here. Generally, what happens is these companies start by looking at their various configurations. Most of them find out they have a significant amount of configuration sprawl. So the next step is, or the first step is to reduce those number of configurations down to a minimum number of standard gold images in this case. And from there, then they can efficiently deploy automation. The other challenge with deploying manually, as I mentioned earlier, is you run into human error. And I didn't write it down here, but this company was actually facing somewhere around 20% failure rate on running their patches. By automating, standardizing, then automating, they were able to exceed their goal of 99% success rate in their patching. So with that, they're able to patch the over 3,000 databases they have. And it's not just standard configurations. This is also clusters, single node, multi-node cluster systems. So all of those things can be automated in the patch cycle.
Yeah, that's a great point, Tim. And one of the things that, the vast majority of our customers have cyber insurance. And many cyber insurance policies now, as you can imagine, are requiring that databases stay patched relatively currently. Because like I said, insurance companies are not stupid. And when they read things like the Verizon report that says 98% of the breaches they investigated came from patch software that could have been patched, that gets their attention. They don't want to have to indemnify an organization if they don't have to. So therefore, we're seeing these cyber insurance policies now requiring organizations to stay patched at a much more current rate than what they were having to otherwise. And really the only way that many organizations are able to do this is through the efficiencies that Database Lifecycle Management Pack brings them in order to stay in compliance, not just with the regulations for the configurations that we talked about, but also to stay patched much more current so that they can comply with their cyber insurance policies.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing that, Ted. Okay, I'm going to take a brief second here to remind everybody that we do have the Q&A chat window available. If you have any questions or comments you'd like to make, I will also try to push out a few links along the way that you can refer to after this presentation, including a link for the Pique study that you can pick up off the web. Okay, here's the next case study. This is another large insurance company. One of their biggest challenges is they're very risk averse. This is not uncommon amongst those with the Oracle database. Obviously, as the saying often goes, it's the proverbial crown jewels. And so this company in particular was looking to adopt the cloud. They're deploying new features and so on, and created a lot of tension around the variability in results. So their strategy was to move to a proactive posture by evaluating, testing the impact of all these changes before they were deployed to production by leveraging real application testing. So the results, they really were able to test out any performance tuning, understand how that will impact results before it gets pushed out to production. It helped them improve their quality of service without dealing with that added risk. They reduced the amount of time and effort for these tests by a factor of 10 by leveraging real application testing. And quite frankly, it increased staff productivity and moved them from less firefighting to more proactive activities. They're able to put effort against strategic initiatives and those kinds of things. So from the director of database management, this quote here on the right talks about their ability to anticipate the impact of the changes they have, and that allowed them to really make those performance enhancements that they wanted to, because they could take that risk away. Okay, next case study. This one talks about Cloud Management Pack. Some key features in the Cloud Management Pack. It enables you to do what we call self-service provisioning. There's also some really valuable tools around cloning and chargeback that help give you a perspective on who's using these features and how often. So in this case, it's a large European federal agency. They had a pretty sizable database estate. One of their big challenges was the rate of growth was well over 20% year over year. This company actually has a very large development team as well. So their strategy was to automate the database provisioning with a self-service model that Cloud Management Pack enables. When they went to this model, they reduced the amount of time from provisioning from what typically took 10 days down to about 18 minutes. And more important than that was, well, as important as that is that now these DBAs can set up this automation and enable the developers to stand up and manage their own database environment, their database estate as needed. So this enabled their small DBA team to continue to support the growth rate that the agency was encountering. Also, I want to note, one of the benefits that they highlighted is this ability to clone and provision within minutes terabyte-sized databases. And this is a feature available exclusively in the Cloud Management Pack. It's called Snap Cloning. And it's very fast, very effective, and very efficient on your storage. Okay, so those are my use cases. I would be remiss if I didn't mention our most recent announcement. We just rolled out Enterprise Manager 13.4. This was a pretty significant release for us. There's quite a lot of new innovation in there. It's the same packs. All of them have enhancements. One of the key components of it is the expansion of the ability to manage both on-premises environments as well as the cloud with less effort. So essentially, it gives you that single pane of glass to monitor and manage both your on-prem estate as well as your cloud estate. Some of the capabilities within there include increased visibility. There's also, actually, this is another pretty cool update. We've embedded some artificial intelligence in there. So with all that data that's collected by Enterprise Manager, now you can actually see some evaluation and analysis of that using artificial intelligence. We've been talking quite a bit about lifecycle automation and control. a pretty neat package is our new migration workbench. It actually helps you identify appropriate databases for migration to the cloud. It goes through an analysis to identify appropriate migration mechanisms. And then it embeds a whole validation step. So you can monitor the whole process along the way. You can monitor the migration as it's taking place, and you can validate the results and compare and contrast with the performance you were getting on-prem. Then lastly, my last bullet down there, we're talking about enterprise-grade management platform. We also are current day with our new mobile app. So now you can manage, you can leverage or get access to Enterprise Manager through your mobile app, as well as a new Grafana plugin. So a lot of you out there are using open source tools for other visibility visualization tasks. Now you have a plugin for Enterprise Manager that you can take advantage of using those Grafana plugins to ingest all that Enterprise Manager data and craft your own visualizations.
Yeah, Tim, one point I want to make on here is especially around the increased visibility and analytics. Again, DBAs are getting a lot of pressure from not just their organization, but from organizations they previously did not receive it from as much. Security, regulatory compliance, the privacy office, etc. And I'd speak to a lot of DBAs that quite honestly are spending an immense amount of time working to generate reports, etc., to attest, if you will, or to provide to these different organizations or groups that want information around this to ensure that they're complying with the cyber insurance policy or with a regulation, etc. Our increased visibility is a mechanism that will take that burden off of you to a large respect and allow them to have that visibility themselves. And therefore, you're not having to answer the phone as much and work to generate reports. So it's a natural evolution for the DBA.
Great. All right. Here is something also relatively new. You can try out the newest features in Enterprise Manager from the Oracle Cloud Marketplace. So the notion here is you go into the Oracle Cloud Marketplace, you will find instances of Enterprise Manager that have already been set up and configured. So it's like one click running to stand up your environment, whether it's for HA, MAA configurations, depending on how you want to take a look at it. So essentially, you're able to get a look at Enterprise Manager, a full install in less than an hour. So there's a lot of details on our website. We have blogs about how to get started with this and give you a chance to take a look at some of these new features. So you don't have to stand up your own environment. You don't have to find your own equipment to test this stuff out. You can just go to the Oracle Cloud and get a quick look at some of these new features that I just mentioned. All right, Ted, thanks for sending out those URLs. I can see several of them. I think I'm going to jump to our question slide. So for you in the audience, if any of this is of interest, please reach out to Ted. There's his email address and phone number. He is looking forward and glad to get your calls, and he supported so many customers in bringing together the experts that are needed to help you evaluate the business side of what your challenges may be, as well as bringing in the technical experts to figure out from a technical perspective what needs to be done.
Thanks, Tim. And I did post the links you have here. I posted them to the chat window. I will follow up with everyone that attended today and send you a PDF of the presentation that was done today, so that you can use it we understand the pains that everyone is feeling. They're common amongst most organizations, and we want to help you, alleviate those pains. So we'll send you a copy of the presentation. We, again, lean on Oracle, lean on us, lean on me, and feel free to reach out to me concerning if you need a specific ROI for your organization. We have ROI calculators that can help you. Again, we've got a lot of third-party studies like the one we went through today, the Pique Solutions study that just came out this month in February. So that's a very relevant, timely third-party study around the quantification of the value of Enterprise Manager, and especially database lifecycle management for your organization. So again, we're here to help, and we appreciate everyone attending today. We'll pause just for a minute. If you do have a question, please feel free to submit it on the Q&A session, and we'll be happy to respond to it. And while we wait for that, Tim, do you have any closing comments?
I do. I'm glad you asked. Okay, so there's a bunch of links there. I want to highlight one that may be a little quieter than it should be. It's the second link, blogs.oracle.com/OEM. Pretty much everything that I work on, both with our technical experts as well as our business analysis, like we've talked about here today, we post a blog on the OEM blog. So you'll probably find a link to this recording, to this session there. You'll find the Pique Solutions, an article or a blog post about the Pique Solutions ROI study. You'll find links to things, for example, how to install 13.4. You'll see links about the latest announcement. You'll find a lot of technical information in there. You'll find a lot of business information in there, and it's a great place to engage. In addition to that, we do have a really popular Twitter handle. So we've got quite a big community there. If you haven't joined that, that's a good place to find out more from others that are using Enterprise Manager.
Excellent, Tim. And doesn't look like we have any questions, so I'll just end with, again, we understand 1/3 of the support requests that come in around the database are approximately related to patching, configuration, provisioning, etc. And we want to help you alleviate that pain, because we know support requests are not fun. So we'll follow up with the presentation to everybody. I did see a question come in. We will post the link to the install to the 13.4. We'll post links to that as well when we send out the PDF from the presentation. And we thank y'all for your time today, and we'll conclude here. Thank you very much.